Recording in progress.
He'll just join if he comes and go from there. Oh yeah, give me a second. Can I start the patter? Is that all right? Adam?
What's that?
Can I start the patter?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Just wait for it.
All right. Good evening. By way of introduction, my name is Davis Fields. I'm the chair of the Campbell Planning Commission. I'd like to call to order of this commission on March 10th, 2026. Ken, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Scissor.
Here.
Commissioner Campcar.
Here.
Commissioner Alney, absent. Commissioner Buckbinder.
Present.
Vice Chair Queenan, absent. Chair Fields.
Present. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any corrections?
I move to approve the February 10th, 2026 minutes.
Second. Do we have a roll call?
Commissioner Scissor.
Aye.
Commissioner Campcar.
Aye.
Commissioner Buckbinder.
Aye.
Chair Fields.
Aye. Director Eastwood, do we have any communications, agenda modifications, or postponements?
Chair Fields, none of the above.
Fantastic. All right, oral requests. This is the point in our meeting where any member of the public may address the commission for an item that is not on the agenda. You can speak up to 5 minutes, but state law prohibits the commission from acting on these things, from acting on any non-agendized items. So the planning commission cannot take any action. The chair can refer the matter to staff to research and possibly place on the agenda for future meetings. Is there anyone online, Ken? All right, it's just us. Closing the oral requests. I'll move us to the public hearing. I will announce the item and then we'll ask staff for presentation, after which we will ask questions. Then we'll open the public hearing if the applicant wishes to speak, followed by any other members of the public who can speak for up to 2 minutes. I will take us to our first item, number 278 East Campbell Avenue, a conditional use permit to allow Fatih Ulis to allow the on-site sale of beer and wine in association with a quick service restaurant, Sultan's Kebab, on property located at 278 East Campbell Avenue. The staff presentation from Daniel Fowler. There we go.
Good evening. Hi. So the application before you is a conditional use permit application for property located at 278 East Campbell Avenue. This is the downtown mixed-use building. It's a 3-story building that was most recently expanded in 2017, located at Campbell and South First Street. The subject tenant space was formerly occupied by Moe's, and the pending new restaurants is called Sultan's Kebab. The property is located within the downtown central business mixed-use zoning district. So the conditional use permit application is fairly straightforward. It would allow for beer and wine service under Type 41 ABC license in association with this new quick service restaurant with standard operating hours that would allow the restaurant to open until 11 p.m. daily. In terms of review considerations, as discussed in the staff report, while in the downtown standard restaurants that incorporate traditional table service that do not have a separate bar are not subject to a conditional use permit. A quick service restaurant in the model that's being presented here does remain subject to conditional use permit in this public hearing. Then in regards to the city's downtown alcoholic beverage policy, the policy basically indicates that restaurants without a separate bar are subject to various provisions contained within that document that relate to entertainment, alcohol service, meal service. Overall, the general idea of that policy is to ensure that alcohol services in association with the restaurants is ancillary, such that those establishments operate as restaurants rather than bars. And so to that end, those standards have been incorporated as now standard conditions for approval in the draft resolution. So therefore, based on an affirmative determination of the required findings for a conditional use permit, as well as for ancillary on-site alcohol sales, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving the conditional use permit. And with that, I'll take any questions the commission may have. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel, for the thorough report as usual. Adam, you want to start?
Just to make sure I understand what's going on here. So I remember Moe's could sell alcohol, but the reason why there's a separate permit here is because it's a different type of restaurant. This is considered fast casual, whereas Moe's was not.
Correct.
Okay. That's all. And then they do have to go through the state licensing for the different alcohol type. But, okay.
Commissioner Conker?
The hours of operation, if you could go a little and discuss that a little bit more on the hours of operation.
So for this particular request, the hours of operation are indicated as 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. traditionally, most of our conditional use permits kind of do more kind of a double bookend where you have business hours, which are the public hours, then an additional hour before and afterwards for more operational hours for staffing purposes such as cleanup and preparation. The applicant for this application, however, requests a little more flexibility to just have a single set of hours, and that is just kind of an operational practice. They will ensure that everything is wrapped up, the employees are out the door by the next.
Okay, so 6:30 to 11 PM,
Yes,
6 to 11 every day.
correct.
So,
And
yeah,
those are the outer ends that they could operate.
got it.
Now, functionally, that means they would need to close to the public earlier, than
Right,
11 o'clock. It's simply that the condition here isn't so prescriptive that it tells them exactly when.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Zisser.
So, yeah, just, it's not a big deal, but I don't understand what was the reasoning behind the single set of hours versus this stipulating the customer operational hours and the employee hours.
Well, that's our traditional practice, but in this
But
particular
we're
case.
not, we don't require that, I guess.
Correct. It's not, that is a practice. It's not a code requirement that we do that. It's simply something that we've done historically. But again, here, the applicant requests a little more flexibility, and given that this is a fairly innocuous proposal, staff didn't have any objection.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand why it's more flexible.
Well, because otherwise, if we say, if the traditional way of doing it would be 10 o'clock is the time that all the customers need to leave, and then they have 1 hour of cleanup time. So I take it that he's suspecting that customers will stay past 10, and that he'll coordinate operationally to ensure that even if they're there past 10, everybody will still be out by 11.
Okay.
So that's the flexibility.
I guess that makes sense. And had Mo's ever applied for a beer wine?
They had a beer wine license.
They had a beer wine, but it doesn't carry over to the next place.
Not in that sense. So ABC in this case reached out to us and said, is this location permitted? Because normally it is something, if we approve it once, like if this application is approved, a subsequent restaurant could operate under the same conditions without ABC confirming again. But because this was materially different, it was going from a traditional restaurant to a more fast casual restaurant. ABC did want to confirm that that was permissible under our zoning. So their authority still, technically the state has authority over issuing these licenses for alcohol service, but those licenses need to be consistent with local zoning codes, including conditional use permit requirements.
Okay. And so, based on my past understanding of this, normally the alcohol carries over from the locations. It continues to be available, right? From a city point of view.
Correct.
But because there's a difference between it not being a regular sit-down restaurant versus a fast service, that's what differentiates the situation here.
Correct. They have basically different land use types.
All right, I'm good.
Only one question. Usually for the alcohol in downtown, you were preparing the tables that would show concentration and, the prune yard relative to downtown. You didn't do it here. Is it because it's not changing?
Great question.
Thank you.
I think I alluded to that a little bit in the staff report, just very obliquely, that there is a lower degree of discretion. That basically means that, yes, because the 2024 updates with some of the streamlining changes introduced the concept of ancillary alcohol service versus primary alcohol service. So one of those changes is that for ancillary, we don't need to go through the overconcentration analysis. So, and this is classified as ancillary.
I have one more question, sorry. So is the license for carry out or just consume in?
Just for on-site.
Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you, staff, as always, for a thorough report. I am going to open the public hearing for this item. We follow the city council's guidance on time allotment. Applicants can speak for up to 5 minutes and members of the public can speak for up to 2 minutes. Would the applicant like to speak? You don't have to, but you are welcome to. Yeah,
Actually, I would like to,
great. So it sounds like we have some questions.
if,
Yeah, please.
one of your representatives come up to the thing.
And if you don't mind saying your name when you're introducing yourselves.
Hi, Commissioner, staff, John Razumich, I'm one of the owners of the property.
Commissioners, my name is Fatih. I'm the owner of Sultan's Kebab and also Elia. Excellent.
You look familiar from a couple months ago.
So I would appreciate just the description of what Sultan Kebab is gonna be, what type of food and, just
Sultan's Kebab is a Mediterranean cuisine. Will be open 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. All day, and we do shawarmas, falafel, kebab, mostly food. We just have this wine and beer option available, but not a full bar. So you'll be able to just go to a counter. We have screens. You just order your food, pay your money, get your number, and we serve it to you, but not in plastic plates. So we do use, porcelain plates and real glasswares and all that.
I see.
Yes. So not fast food, just, casual dining.
Probably something akin to IKEA, I would say, is
Yes.
probably recognizable.
Excellent.
Alan?
You have other locations, right? You have 3 or 4 other locations like in Contra Costa County.
Yes, so we have one in Pleasanton, Danville, and Livermore.
And how long have you been in business?
We started about 18 years ago. Sultan is my dad's name, passed away 5 years ago. So I took over from him and just kind of grew the business and opened more locations.
How good is the food?
Great.
Okay, good, I'll be there.
Thank you.
Adam, do you have any questions?
Roughly when would you be expecting to open if all goes well?
Yesterday. As soon as possible, we like to. We're just waiting on
Final things with the building
final
department.
with the building
Yeah.
department.
Just updated a space plan and some stuff for some exiting and things like that, so they're just waiting for the final sign off on that permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Was there any other part of just getting this approved that you found like onerous or unusual? Cause like this, like just curious of like your experience, like opening a location.
Yeah, this was definitely surprising. I mean, this is my 10th restaurant. This was kind of a confusing and new thing for us too.
The CUP.
Yes, CUP for the just wine and beer.
Yeah.
Because the previous restaurant, Mo's, did have a wine and beer also. And I'm not even changing the layout or anything.
Yeah.
I was just kind of, and this was a last minute thing we figured it out. I was not aware of or I was not expecting. So,
Historically, we've kind of found like second, third generation restaurants that tenants don't make any changes really to like electrical, plumbing, everything's there. It's the general thought is, okay, we're gonna make the cosmetic changes, call in the health department, have them do an inspection, you transfer the liquor license over, and they're kind of open pretty seamlessly. I think that's why tenants are really attracted to second gen space, because it's a relatively seamless process as long as they're not completely rejiggering the entire space.
Yeah.
But we understand. It seems like with downtown, it's close. There's been more of a process here, but honestly, staff's been really great to work with despite the obstacles. Nathan's been really proactive with, getting us in front and getting the building department what they need. If the seating configuration is slightly changed or the new counter was, changed a little bit in the configuration, albeit that's nothing plumbing, electrical or anything that would really trigger a building permit, but yet it feels like we have to, in order to get a business license, they've now kind of tied that to the building department for this process. And it's, I think if we have a great architect, if we would have known it a little ahead of time, it was assumptive on our part, no fault of the city, just because we've just assumed, like a lot of other second gen spaces like he's gone into as well, that it would just be pretty clear cut, dealing mainly with the health department going forward. And then the extra layer of the building department's probably caused, 30, 40 day delay, but that's probably because we were playing catch up on it. But everyone on the city side has been great on notifying us, so, and been good, so, yeah. And then getting this commission hearing very quickly was, definitely appreciated. Not lost on us all. So thank you for that, Daniel, and everyone. But,
Good.
And so, so today I had lunch at SAJJ Saj Mediterranean Restaurant in North First Street. It is near 237 area, and it was great. So I'm looking forward to more Mediterranean choices down here. Welcome to the South Bay, the Sultan. You know.
I got stopped on the street today for a great half hour while my takeout food got cold, but it was when I ran into Paul Resnikoff, who I used to be a planning commissioner with, and then he was on city council. And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, Elliot's coming." He's like, "No, when's the kebab place?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay, man, all right." So I think there's actually a lot of great fanfare for that, just because
Yeah.
the fast casual, approachable, take it out, eat it at home after a long day of work.
Well,
So I think they'll do well. Yeah.
And healthy, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the healthy that drew us to the place, you know, if you want.
It was an offering OPA had that people liked a lot. It was kind of like a lower price menu option that people gravitated toward. And I think it's nice to have the lifted, offering in Elia, and then you've got Sultan's. It's much more price approachable, for different times of the day, different folks.
That's
days of the
great.
week. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this application? Anybody online? Okay. I will close the public hearing. And we will discuss as a commission. Let's go flip the sides. Commissioner Zisser.
I think it's fine. It's great that there's a place to fill that spot. So I'm all for it.
Commissioner Comgar.
Same here. I think it's great that they're coming. You know, I love the Mediterranean food, and I like that that businesses are coming to our downtown and make it a happening place, more of a happening place, and not just on Saturday nights and Friday nights, but during the day. So, so great, fully supported.
Commissioner Buchbinder.
I don't have anything particular to say other than I have no particular objections. As with many of these things, this seems like an excellent project, and I look forward to visiting it.
Yeah, strong support. It's gonna shock you what I'm gonna say. I wish they didn't have to do the CUP, especially knowing Mo's had a license. I kind of hope this is something we revisit in our streamlining again of how do we make this even easier? Remove this as a roadblock, so help them open a little bit sooner. It seems like a very benign, thing they're trying to add to the business. But otherwise, very supportive. Congratulations. Why don't we go ahead and take a vote?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Yeah.
I move for the planning commission grant approval of a conditional use permit to allow ancillary on-site alcohol sales in conjunction with a pedestrian-oriented activity, operating as a quick-service restaurant with outdoor seating on property located at 278 East Campbell Avenue, file number PLN 2026-19.
Second.
Great. Okay, now may we have.
Commissioner Scissor,
Aye.
Commissioner Camcar,
Aye.
Commissioner Buckbinder,
Aye.
Chair Fields.
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. Planning Commission action is final unless appealed in writing to the city clerk within 10 calendar days. Thank you. Congratulations. All right. We will now move to the third item on our agenda, the study session on economic development, including an overview of the city's economic development plan and current economic conditions. It is PLN 2026-22. And our speaker is Campbell's Economic Development Manager, Nathan Donato Weinstein. Oh yeah, no problem.
Ken taught me how to do this like 30 minutes ago, so.
Are you taking credit for this one, for the kebabs?
It's all Fatih and Marat. They're gonna be amazing. Okay. Did I accept? I thought I did. Oh, here we go. Join as.
So while Nate said, maybe I just do a few words introduction. I can't remember if we introduced Nate to you. We might have. Oh, we haven't?
Yeah.
Oh, we did. Okay. It's just my early onset dementia. It's kind of confusing. So very happy to have Nate here as our newer economic development manager. I've been in the seat for quite some time. As the commission will remember, the city has a newish economic development plan, a lot of brand new ideas, the first comprehensive economic development plan we've ever had. And with Nate, we have a lot of new energy and ideas on moving forward with the program. Tonight is kind of two parts. One is just a lens into our economic development programming, what Nate does and his view of, and some facts you'll see of our economic base and how it's important to the city and the community and revenues and to the people who work here. To give you a lens on that lens of the community and what works. Number one. Number two, some things he's observed as an economic development manager and helping businesses, which we hope he'll take to heart. And point number three, knowing you've already created a economic development ad hoc subcommittee with the task of looking at ways we could streamline or help businesses. Perhaps we thought this was a great opportunity at the beginning of that to put some ideas on the table, that perhaps the ad hoc subcommittee chase. With that, I'll pass it to Nate.
Thank you so much, Rob. That was a great intro. And I really could not be better teed up tonight than the previous item, which I think dovetails a lot with what we've been talking about recently around streamlining. So I'm excited to share some insights with the commission as you all start thinking about the next phase of the streamlining work. And really, I just want to, my goal tonight is to leave you with something, maybe interesting that you didn't know, and happy to have a robust discussion about it. So I'll start with just some framing around what is economic development, then walk through some fundamentals around city revenue, sales tax, and jobs, and kind of what that looks like in Campbell. From there, we'll shift into a commercial real estate kind of status report and trends before I close with a few policy considerations that I would recommend we take to heart. So what do we actually mean when we talk about economic development? Well, at its core, it's pretty simple. It's all the things we do to support the health and growth of jobs, business, and the local tax base. Cities tend to care a lot about economic development for lots of reasons, but three of the ones I think are most important to highlight is clearly tax revenue. So economic activity ultimately funds city services, things like police, parks, street maintenance, and the services that our residents need and demand. And a stronger and deeper revenue base is what's going to lower that individual tax burden on residents. Second is jobs. So access to jobs creates economic opportunity for residents and our neighbors and the possibility for wealth creation. And then the third thing is kind of squishier, which is this notion that a healthy economy supports all the things that people really like about a city. So having an active downtown, having robust retail options, and the ability for a city to maintain a clean and safe environment, all kind of rolls up to economic development. So I want to be clear that cities do not actually create businesses or jobs, except jobs within the city, of course, the city organization. Rather, what cities do is shape the environment that businesses, entrepreneurs, and workers want to be in and invest in. And economic development uses a set of tools to influence that environment. And these boxes represent some of the most important and most common. And some of these are really practical things like helping a company find qualified workers. Others are more strategic, like thinking up a new marketing campaign for a city. But critically, this is stuff that does not lie within just one person or one department or one job, but rather involves coordination across the organization, regional partners, and the private sector. And I like to say that economic development is all of our business and you're all on the team. So Campbell does have an economic development plan, as Rob alluded to, and it's really how we prioritize those tools in Campbell. And overall, it has a really straightforward goal around strengthening our economic base and playing to our strengths and making it easier for businesses and investors to invest here. The 4 priorities on this slide are how we organize that work. The plan was adopted in 2024 at the same time that first cut at the streamlining work was also passed. Yours truly was hired in the spring of last year, and kind of in my first year, I've been really trying to build the foundations of the program, and a big part of that has been outreach to some of our largest employers, our strategic growth companies, our revenue generators, to better understand Campbell's base, along with our commercial real estate community, folks like John. And you'll hear some of my takeaways today in the upcoming slides. So with that context, I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about sales tax and jobs. But I want to highlight that the city does not make land use decisions based purely on things like revenue generation. I'm going to talk a lot about it, but I just want to be clear that we make land use decisions based on the general plan. And the general plan has a lot in it in its economic development element around economic development. So it is very much aligned with our goals. But the goal here is really to just provide insight into how our economy works and drives revenue so that we can just be mindful of it. So Campbell has a roughly $70 million general fund in this year's budget, and that's the city's primary account that funds kind of all the discretionary account that funds primary city services. And as you can see, the 2 largest sources of revenue for the general fund is property tax and sales tax. I want to be clear, a lot of people don't know this, but cities receive a small slice of both of those revenue sources. So here in Campbell, we receive about 10 cents on the dollar of every property tax dollar, and our base sales tax is 1% of the taxable purchase price of goods. Many cities, including Campbell, also have voter-approved district sales taxes, what we call district taxes, that add additional fractions of a penny on top of that. Cities often focus on sales tax because it's one of the most responsive revenue sources. But all of these revenue sources are really important, including the fees for licenses and permits, including the business license tax, including the hotel tax, which is often overlooked but brings in over $4 million a year to the city from our small portfolio of 7 hotels. So the next couple slides, I'm going to talk a little bit more about sales tax and hopefully demystify some things that I've always found interesting. First, what actually generates sales tax? Well, there's a guidebook that's like 80 pages long from the state of California. There's a lot. But basically, the idea is that sales tax applies to taxable physical goods sold through a place of business in Campbell. That includes traditional retail sales that we all know and love, but also things like building materials, equipment, networking equipment, other business-to-business sales of physical products. Sales tax can also be allocated here when transactions are processed through a business located in Campbell, even if the goods are not here, as long as the business participates in the sale, such as a sales office or a company headquarters. At the same time, many businesses don't generate sales tax at all. Sectors like software services, professional services, fitness, medical offices, those businesses may not generate any sales tax, and that's okay. So those businesses are still really important to the economy. They create important jobs and services that residents want and need. No direct city revenue, but they may still drive important economic activity. Looking more deeply at how our sales tax picture actually unfolds in Campbell. As you can see, thanks to folks like Fatih, restaurants are typically our largest individual category. You'll also see a category labeled state and county pool. That is largely, but not only, online sales. It has been growing as a share of the overall sales tax picture. And another important thing to notice is that a significant portion of our revenue comes from non-retail activity. So you're seeing that in the business and industry section, building and construction, and transportation. There is not a single ideal sales tax mix. Every city's economy looks a little bit different, but Campbell is relatively light or missing some key categories that you would expect in a city our size. And that includes things like car dealerships, new car dealerships, and large format retail, which tend to be a really important and dependable base for many other cities. The other key takeaway I want you to have around sales tax is how concentrated our sales tax base is. So our top 100 sales tax payers in Campbell account for more than 70% of all of the sales tax that we receive as a city. The top 25 sales taxpayers account for more than 40%. This is not actually unusual. Many cities have similar types of sales tax concentration, but it does underscore the importance of retention to a city like Campbell, particularly because we have such a small base to work with to begin with. And retaining key taxpayers is a lot easier than adding many new ones. So who are these sales taxpayers? Well, the state of California does not allow us to share sales tax information specific to taxpayers. But the one kind of bone they throw is they let you see a top 25 list for a given municipality if it's provided in alphabetical order. And I love this slide because I think there's some really interesting takeaways. One of them is, like we've already kind of touched on, it's not just retail. You'll see construction suppliers, equipment companies, caterers, and industrial users alongside traditional retail like Kohl's and Marshall's. And that just highlights, again, the importance of industrial and business activity to the city's tax base. The second thing I think is interesting is that being a large company does not necessarily mean you are a large sales taxpayer, and vice versa. Many of our kind of key contributors are small, family-owned businesses that many people may never have heard of, but are important players in their industry. Folks like Sierra Pacific Turf Supply, which I bet most people don't know who they are, but they're like an industry leader in the golf. They sell landscape material to that industry. And the final thing is that this list is not static. It changes from quarter to quarter, depending on kind of who's had a good quarter, who has come into your city, who has left your city. Some businesses tend to be very consistent contributors, and that's your major retailers. But others, particularly the business-to-business players, can be a little lumpy, and you'll see them kind of come and go as they have good quarters or bad quarters. So I just mentioned that we are not allowed to share specific taxpayer information, but we can share kind of a revenue range for specific retail types. And that's what this slide is showing you. Not all of these categories are present in Campbell, but what you can see is the numbers really vary. And that makes sense, right? Depending on where a business is located, the trade area, kind of how big it is, the numbers vary a lot. But even the low end of these types of retailers would be very significant revenues for a city like Campbell. And so the main point of looking at this is to just recognize the value of what I call kind of main retail locations, and just how strategically important they are for a city and how very hard, next to impossible, they may be to replace once they're gone. So we've been looking at revenue, but jobs are just as critical to a city, right? So why can cities care about having jobs? Daytime population is critically important. So that's what's going to drive your retail, your services, and having employment opportunities for all types of people. When we have a strong, diverse job base, it means our economy is diversified and it's more resilient. This map is showing us like a lot of things. So it's showing us job density That's the darker blues and the bigger dots are showing more jobs within a specific geography. It's also showing us inflow and outflow. So how many workers are coming into Campbell to work every day versus how many Campbell residents are leaving the city to work elsewhere. And that very small fraction of people who both live and work in Campbell. And what I wanted to point out is a couple takeaways. The first is Campbell's job portfolio is modest, but we have something kind of special, which is we are not purely a bedroom. We are kind of just barely, but we are a modest job hub because more workers are coming in than out. And cities that have a higher daytime population are associated with having kind of stronger physical sustainability. Now, this kind of daytime population would be dwarfed by many of our neighbors like Sunnyvale and Santa Clara and Palo Alto, whose daytime population will triple, quadruple, quintuple, right? But it is still kind of on the ledger net positive, and that is very special. The second takeaway is just the geography of jobs and that our jobs are not everywhere, right? Like retail, our employment is going to cluster in areas that are like particularly aligned with employer needs. So that Hamilton and Bascom and 17 corridor, the Southern Industrial Corridor, those areas have the freeway access, the roads, the regional visibility that folks need. You know, we often think as a Campbell resident, I often complain about the Hamilton and 17 interchange and just what a mess it is. But in a lot of ways, that's an asset. That's an asset for a retailer. That kind of access is an asset for an employer. So the implication for us is just that employment uses, like retail uses, also are sensitive to having the right sites. So wrapping up on jobs, there's a lot of data on this, but I'll just highlight a couple things that stand out. We've looked at where are our jobs. This is about what are our jobs. It has been a long, hard slog since 2020 to get back just barely to where we were in terms of the number of jobs in Campbell. We've made it, but the makeup of the city's employment has shifted a bit. These days, we are more oriented toward healthcare, tech, and professional services and personal services, and less oriented around retail and support services, a little less on construction and manufacturing, though those are still important bases for us. Overall, we are still fairly diversified, and that's important because it means resiliency. So stepping back from the numbers, a couple themes. One is that we are a job center, but a modest one. Sites that support major employers or revenue generators are very limited and precious, and a significant share of our revenue is tied to a small number of businesses, and that means retention really matters and ultimately why our land use decisions matter so much. So I'm going to speed through kind of an update for you on our commercial real estate food groups now, starting with retail, and just share from my standpoint, like how are we doing with these types of real estate? So our retail market in Campbell is small. It's mostly neighborhood serving, except for those special precious corridors that we've talked about. And those sites, right, those kind of anchor retail sites are really important, and they tend not to easily relocate, even in a ground floor mixed use context. Retail vacancy in Campbell and the West Valley generally is pretty low, although we have had exposure to some persistent vacancies in the city. The good news is that several of those higher profile vacancies are like in process now of finally getting something going. And so that includes our Big Lots, the Bed Bath and Beyond, the Rock Bottom space. But no matter the type of retailer or the site, speed and certainty are critical factors to retail decision making. Retail tenants are evaluating multiple municipalities against each other, and they want to see a path to opening that has as little risk and can be done as quickly as possible. The active tenant types locally is kind of what we're seeing nationally in terms of retail trends, which is the continued dominance of food, especially, lately specialty beverage, experience, fitness, physical goods is continuing to become rarer and rarer. Interestingly, downtown Campbell is actually sort of a hub of actual retail, right? It's kind of fantastic, independent and mom and pop, but physical retail. And that trend around food and experiences is reflected in some recent tenant activity that we've seen in Campbell over like the last year to 6 months, which I've placed on the right. Looking at office, we are a baby office market. Campbell is about 2.5 million square feet of office. For comparison's sake, downtown San Jose is about 11 million square feet, and that is a small office market in the eyes of the commercial real estate community. Our sweet spot when it comes to office tends to be smaller professional services firms, startup tech, not large campuses. A 20,000 square foot tenant is a big deal in Campbell, and it's rare. Recently, we have seen some good pickups and expansions from neighboring cities, particularly at the Pruneyard and in downtown. And tenants consistently tell us that downtown and the Pruneyard and amenities are a major draw for them, as are kind of the general quality of life that Campbell offers. So things like a clean, safe, well-managed city really matters. It matters today more than ever for economic development purposes. Vacancy, though, is high. In fact, it's among the highest in the region at around 32%. That can change quickly because we are a small market. We have two significant office vacancies that you may be thinking of right now. One of them is 1700 Dell Avenue, which is the 165,000 square foot building built just a couple of years ago, which is gorgeous, as well as 300 Orchard City Drive, the cannery, which can put together around 90,000 square feet. Those owners continue to look for opportunities to release those spaces, and we're in touch with them quite a bit. I don't want to leave the hospitality market out of things because it's interesting and important. We have 7 hotels, about 700 rooms. Occupancy has been recovering. The other metrics that we look at for hotels, like revenue per available room, are still below pre-pandemic levels. When we talk to hoteliers, they tell us it's because corporate travel and international travel has not come back, as well as competition from newer and more recently renovated hotels. Silicon Valley underwent a hotel construction boom in the most recent 10 years or so. Campbell did not. Our hotel product does not necessarily compete well for corporate accounts because of that. And so that's why it's really great to see the investment of folks like the Courtyard that recently came before you for their renovation, and the sale of the Campbell Inn, which just transacted, and that new owner is contemplating a potential renovation there as well. One thing that has been flagged from the development community is around our floor area ratio limitations in Campbell, which is 1.0 in most of the city, and that today's select service hotel brands really need a little bit more than that to make it work. And so at some point, the hotel market is not there yet for new development today, but we may want to get ahead of that by adding in more flexibility for hotels to be ready for when that market turns. All right, industrial. This is among my favorite real estate food groups. It's small in Campbell. It's actually really important regionally because it's among the last pockets of light industrial space that exists in the West Valley. It supports all of those great traded sectors that we need here, like building materials, construction, manufacturing, machine shops, lower volume production, and product development. We have really strong demand for this stuff in Campbell, especially the smaller suites. Traditionally, the vacancy rate is minuscule. In recent months, it has increased as a couple of large family-owned firms have kind of wound down their businesses and put their spaces on the market. Those owners, staff is in contact with those owners and working with them to think through their next steps. I do not expect our vacancy to remain that high forever. This is just highlighting the difference between McGlincy Lane and Dell Avenue. They're a little bit different. I think it could make sense to look at those and just make sure that they're still kind of functioning the way they should and the way business is currently operating. And then finally, just want to spend just a quick second on Dell. I'm on a mission to just promote the visibility of Dell Avenue. We drive by it and we may not see it, but there's a heck of a lot of incredible things happening on Dell. It's a innovation cluster. You've got incredible robotics, medical device, EV infrastructure companies doing great things there. Maybe in small buildings, but doing really exciting work. So what on all this? Campbell's real estate market is evolving. Just like the rest of Silicon Valley, retail continues to shift towards food, services, and experiences. Industrial is super important still. And at the same time, there is now and there will continue to be rising pressure to convert many of our commercial sites beyond what is in our housing element today, in part due to new state housing laws. In some cases, that may make sense. Even from an economic development standpoint, it can make sense to do commercial pruning, but it does make the remaining employment land more important to think about very carefully. Okay, so with that market context in mind, I'm going to close and get into the end with some policy considerations that flow from what we've been seeing in the data and in conversations from tenants and property owners. On the subject of industrial, one theme that comes through clearly is just how important it is to continue to have a place for people to work who may not have a four-year degree. And that's important for the region, as well as for our innovation ecosystem. And keeping these kinds of businesses local also helps shorten supply chains and reduce transportation impacts. But industrial districts tend to function best when they are cohesive and contiguous, because these are areas really designed for high intensity land uses, right? Things like significant truck traffic, a lot of loading activity, or hazardous materials on site. We often see non-industrial users gravitate to these areas because the rents are lower than retail or strip centers, and those users can pay more than industrial users. Over time, that will change the economics of a district. And when industrial businesses leave, they usually leave Silicon Valley altogether and we lose them. And so as we think about, opportunities to look at how our code evolves, I want to seed a couple ideas for the commission to think about, starting with industrial. So one idea is, as we look at commercial uses and streamlining commercial uses, we should also look at industrial uses and how we might make things easier for the bona fide industrial users. Like, does auto repair always need a full-blown CUP in light industrial space? I don't know that it does, right? And so at the same time, we don't ignore them and their needs around streamlining. I would recommend exploring tightening up some of the allowances for non-industrial uses in LI and RD zones, at least for the larger and more strategically important buildings, of which Campbell has very few. Another idea worth looking at is something we just saw with Sultan's Kebab, which is the line between full service and quick service restaurants has really blurred over time. I don't know that I can tell them apart anymore. And a lot of times it falls somewhere in between. But our zoning treats quick service restaurants different, as well as the alcohol permitting that is required. And so I think that is an area where the commission may want to take a look at where that process can be simplified and improved. Something that might be in your interest is kind of a broader reset of how we think of this use permit exercise in the first place. So what if we assumed administrative CUP as the default for our uses that currently require a CUP, and then focused our policy work and exploration around which uses we might want to upgrade to a full-blown CUP, kind of just look at it from the other direction. Finally, these are just a couple ideas to keep on the radar. I already mentioned exploring a modest increase to hotel FAR. We've also had some interest from some of our anchors around increased flexibility for signage, particularly from the folks at the Pruneyard office ownership, as well as some of our theater owners, movie theater owners. We also have kind of some changes in the vehicle world, right? EVs and new vehicle startups are bringing new business models, many of which use much smaller spaces. And it may be an opportunity for the city to revisit our vehicle use categories and how those are looked at. And then finally, we've seen the importance of exterior investment, like the recent courtyard project, as well as the re-roof at Hamilton Square, for that matter. And how we want that, right? We want to lower barriers to investment for things like exterior improvements, which make a big difference. So how can we streamline approvals for those kinds of things when they're primarily about maintaining and upgrading existing buildings? So I know that was a lot. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight and share some of the things I've been seeing. I'm happy to take questions.
Well, that was an awesome, thorough report. Thank you so much. I feel like I learned a lot. It's study session, so I think it's a pretty loose question discussion time. Maybe start down here with questions and sort of evolve from there.
So first, I'd like to say thank you for that presentation. I think this provides a lot of perspective, for example, as to why we're so, I guess, squirrely about letting people who are not light industrial use the light industrial spaces, because it's important to the city in the region in these particular ways. This is like, Brian's context is very, very helpful. I also, I really appreciate the specific notes about this is a particular rule that's a problem. I realize that some of the things that you're dealing with are not, this is a particular rule that's a problem. It's sort of a broad issue of how do we get people to move into the space and so forth. But like, for example, like the specific, hotels need a higher FAR. Like, that's really something that should be actionable. And I recognize this will probably involve a lot more discussion, but I like the idea that instead of saying everything is, to put it a little bit over emphatically, everything is forbidden, a few things are permitted, you say everything is permitted, a few things should be forbidden. The difference between an administrative and a full conditional use permit process, because I think generally we've been historically very cautious about this. We've still been pretty cautious about this. And when we do conditional use permits, it's very rare that it's something that we have real controversy or concerns about. But I think we are still considerably more concerned than we should be. And it might be worth going back to a blank slate and thinking okay, what do we actually want to make sure that, what is worth this kind of process, especially given that if anybody has serious concerns, they can bump it up or appeal from an administrative CUP, as I understand it. And I guess the only thing that I would like to know is, broadly speaking, we spend a lot more time thinking about residential than commercial real estate here. I know that new construction means more property tax revenue because it's assessed at its construction value. So is it a net positive or negative? So when you're looking at economic development and you see a proposal came in this week, I think, for the corner of Campbell and Bascom, and they've redone it so it's not going to be a hotel and an apartment building. It's just an apartment building. It's going to be 350 units. When you see that, do you think yes, or do you think, oh darn?
I love that question. I will say that project is, I'll address the hotel question. That project will be a big net positive for the city, right? So the types of assessed value for a project of that size and scale will throw off a lot of property tax, even with the only 10% of the 1% that the city of Campbell gets. So it is a good thing. I want to be clear that, I think economic development used to be tagged as sometimes less favorable to housing. But the reality is, I think today's economic developers look at housing as housing can be an economic development, right? We're drawing more to the retail trade area, and the valuation of these projects is so high now that it sometimes can be competitive with types of retail uses. So that I can't tell you how excited I am to see movement on that site. The hotel going away does break my economic development heart. But that's because we have so few opportunity sites for hotels in Campbell. You have the, you know, the main and main kind of location where they can go. And so, so that's kind of a bummer. At the same time, you know, today's hotel market is not there for new development whatsoever. And we have to be honest about where we are.
Thanks, that is enlightening.
Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you. So I'd like to touch on three areas. One is, you mentioned auto dealership. We don't have any new auto dealership. You know, I have a day job, and one of my day jobs is to help new auto dealerships develop and get permits. So we work with AutoNation, Sonic, Putnam, Penske, you know, DGBG, you know, and also the independent, you know, so on. And so we have quite a few, you know, and I've asked them, you know, well, why don't you go for a site in Campbell? They go like, where?
Yeah.
You know, and so so I'm sure you would be open for me to, you know, have them contact you, and together you guys can figure out.
I would love to pick an auto, you know, an auto dealer's brain on what makes a good site off of an auto mall, right? So there are, you know, Los Gatos, for instance, has seen recently a couple of new kind of high-end, almost boutique new auto dealers come in.
Tesla, for example?
They came in, right. And so there may, you know, it's just very hard to find those sites in Campbell.
Right, right.
The reason I highlighted the change in EV business models is because there is evolution in the model, right? And the dealerships themselves are shrinking and changing kind of what they look like. That has sales tax policy implications that quite honestly have not completely been ironed out at the state level that we're continuing to follow. But it is something that we should be looking at and thinking about.
So,
Oh, go ahead. I have a follow-up on the auto dealership.
well, go ahead. Yeah, it's a good time.
So I'm just curious, like, you know, you can go to Valley Fair now and they have those basically kiosks, 2 cars. There's no car. You can't buy a car there.
Yeah.
Like, what is the sales tax situation? Because I'm just like curious, like, what are we actually, I think that was like a very interesting takeaway. But like, if we were thinking about revenue, like, what would be sort of the right mix for Campbell?
Showroom dealerships is an evolving area of sales tax policy at the state level. And the state has recently come down to say that the showrooms are not allocated, will not allocate the 1%, what's called the 1% Bradley Burns sales tax share, to the hosting city, right? The pure showrooms. And so that the kind of the other discussions is around these vehicle pickup points and delivery centers. You may have seen recent news about Rivian and Milpitas recently that just opened one that is generating significant revenue for the city of Milpitas. And so these are uses that actually just this week, we've been in touch with the city has sales tax consultants who help us with policy and analysis to get an update on where the state stands with respect to that issue.
Thank you. So the next is the housing issue. How could housing generate sales tax? You know, and then there's also the issue of one-time sales tax, the construction tax, versus an ongoing, you know, annual, semi-annual.
Yes, those are great points. So in terms of, you know, housing itself, you know, doesn't generate direct sales tax, but when you add housing, you add consumers to the trade area that are going to support your strip centers and your retail and your services too, right? So in an indirect way, it supports the city's sales tax activity.
And also take away, as you increase housing, you take away homelessness, which also helps economic development of the city because they don't have to probably provide as much services or, you know, where you have to make service calls or, you know, clean up of the encampments and, you know, things like that. So I think that's
right. I mean, You bring up a good point. Yes, we need more housing at all levels, all options for everyone. To be clear, on the residential side, right, you have a ledger. You have a ledger around revenue and costs. And so your residential projects are going to bring, especially these days, they're going to bring more property tax than we maybe used to get because residential valuations have skyrocketed so much. But residential, to be clear, also has a cost side of the ledger, right, around city services. And so it's not just as it does for commercial. It's not kind of black and white around how these things kind of iron out.
When I used to be a city of San Jose planning commissioner, they had done their calculation and they would say at densities of 55 dwelling
Right.
units to the acre
Yes.
is when you break even. But
Right.
that was at lower cost. Campbell has, that was at lower valuation. Campbell has higher valuation, and that was like 10 years ago. So by now, probably it's not as high as 55 dwelling units per acre, but probably lower can also have.
Yeah, and I mean, the break-even analysis is really interesting. I mean, I would say we haven't done that in Campbell, I don't believe, anytime recently, but, certainly today's residential product has grown in valuation so much. The one thing I would point out is, Prop 13, love it or hate it, kind of creates a cap, right? That sort of once that assessed value hits the roll, unless it's turning over,
Right.
it's gonna kind of stay there and increase up to the legal limit every year, right? And so over time, that will dilute the relative value of that project, right? Until it turns over.
Okay. And then the last point I want to bring up is staying with this housing and affordable housing type of it thing is one of our concentration is looking at creating units, individual units, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, whatever. And they have to stay smaller so that they can stay in the affordable housing category, price range. And in looking at, let's start over, why are we just looking at units? Why not looking at bedrooms? Why not a development that has 5 bedrooms in it? Why can't we count the bedrooms as living spaces rather than units?
On purpose.
So a developer would say, I'll build 5 bedrooms, if they can be counted as providing units for housing and get affordable housing credit, so counting just units, why don't we count bedrooms? That's what ADU is. ADU provides 1 or 2 bedrooms, right? So why can't we?
You gotta talk to the state.
So I'm not sure if our
Whoever.
economic development manager is gonna weigh into
Yeah.
production and housing units. And I wouldn't want him to.
The reason
I'm sorry,
bringing
Rob.
this
We'll
up-
take your point.
The reason I'm bringing it up because after this, we're going to be talking about affordable housing thing, in our subcommittee. And so these are some of the things that maybe we have to, think out of the box. That's the only reason I bring it. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, great presentation. Way too much information.
Sorry.
But we're gonna get together, you and I and Gary, because we have a subcommittee thing that we're gonna do. It's relevant to this, on the streamlining. But first of all, just a clarification, because I've been thinking about this, is that we think so much about getting more sales tax and stuff, and I realized that with all this new housing, that the property tax is going to go up significantly, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, for instance, we're quite familiar with the Llewellyn project. I don't know if you're familiar with the Llewellyn project, okay? It's 120 townhomes on a 5-acre property that used to be, that was a private social services facility, okay? It's been around for a really, really long time. So I assume the property taxes on that are fairly low, even though it's,
Yes.
and it's a big
Right.
piece of parcel. Now we're putting 120, mostly market rate
Right.
units on it that are going to be mostly $1 million townhomes or more. So I'm assuming that's going to get reassessed at a significantly larger number. Am I mistaken about this?
It will, yeah.
So our share of the property taxes will zoom up on something like that. And the same thing will happen on all the other projects that are being built.
Right, so you're right, and as I said, in some cases, what you might call commercial pruning actually makes sense even from an economic development standpoint, when you're looking at it purely from a property tax valuation standpoint.
Right.
The important thing to keep in mind is we look at maybe some other sites that may be more economically productive, we shouldn't purely be thinking of revenue in any of this, right?
Right, I understand.
Some of it is more around the ecosystem.
Right, I understand. So it brings me to mind about, you were talking about, we don't have much big box, we have one area where there's big boxes. And, obviously Home Depot is there's a big number in there for sales tax, right? Because everything you buy there, for the most part, is taxable. As hardware, okay? I mean, maybe the services that they provide, it's not taxable, but, or if there's some things where, well, I don't know if there's OEM stuff. I don't know if it's business to business, there's no tax on it, but it's a big sales tax provider for family. And we used to have Bed Bath and Beyond, okay? And that was a big box retail, and that went away. And I assume we lost a fair amount of sales tax revenue from that. And now it's being replaced by a health club, okay? And we approved the health club because since it's been sitting empty and they're coming in and putting in a health club. We're not going to generate sales tax from a health club.
Right.
Okay? Now, in some ways it's a good use, but in some ways it's really not a good use because that was built as a big box. And so I guess my question to you is, I don't know if the city can, say, well, we really don't want you. Okay, but it seems to me that was not that's not going to be the most effective use of that space.
Yeah, I mean, from an economic development standpoint, that location right off 17 is like an irreplaceable retail site. Now that property itself, and John is like very familiar with that site. Perhaps in a few minutes, maybe he can share some thoughts. It may have had specific parameters that maybe made it less desirable for specific physical goods retail as well. I'm not familiar exactly.
Well, it would have been hard to refill as a big box. I mean, it was a big 2-story facility, and some other big box would have had to come in to take its place. So, so and it was sitting empty for a long time. So, I mean,
as Fry's, that's.
Well, yeah, and Fry's is another good example. But, and the other thing is like, it's like, okay, I love the pickleball. And I would have loved, we had actually more pickleball and actually where they could sell something that we get some sales tax from. Because we're not getting it, unless somebody buys a racket there, there's no sales tax coming out of the paddle, okay, paddle, and some balls. We're not getting any sales tax out of there. So if if we had allowed them, no offense to staff, we allowed them to put in a little restaurant and bar, and we would have got some sales tax from it.
There may have been some kind of ancillary
I
sales
understand.
tax from it. Yeah.
But hopefully those people will leave the pickleball and go to downtown and buy something, right? I understand.
I mean, hopefully they'll stay in the hotels, right, and come for a tournament or
Well,
something.
yeah, definitely. Now, on the the FARs for the hotel, what does this mean in real terms? Does this mean that we're not giving them enough opportunity to put up more floors? Or is that it?
Yeah, a little extra height would be helpful. Staff is currently researching in other kind of recent hotel development typology to understand kind of where these projects are falling in terms of floor area ratio.
Okay. And then the other thing I want to talk about, which I really don't understand this vehicle use category on the EV thing. Can you give me like a real world?
Yeah, so, as on the sales side, right, we are seeing this trend around showrooming. And so, is that something that, we might want to facilitate more in the city? We're looking at where might we want to kind of streamline the opportunity for
But
that.
But the question is whether that generates sales tax, right?
We don't know, yes, correct. It's an evolving area. It's changing. It kind of was functioning one way, and then the state has kind of transitioned how they look at it, and now it's functioning another way. That happens sometimes with when
So
you.
like the one in Santana Row, there's something in Santana Row. I don't know if it's Tesla. They've got a showroom. They got a,
There's a couple Polestar.
and Polestar, okay. So those are showrooms, okay? But if they sell a car out of there, does it come from Tesla out of Sunnyvale? I mean, do we understand how that works?
It's a good question. I don't. And so, it's one of the things as we do some of this research that I'm interested in learning more about is how these business models are functioning. And kind of the recent change we've seen is this trend around pickup locations and customer delivery points. And that seems to be where the state is more interested in allocating the kind of point of sale.
All right, okay. And the only other thing I wanted to comment on, because you and I have talked, and I expressed this to you, but I thought maybe you can get it on the record. I actually sort of read the entire economic development plan, not really read the whole thing, but I did scan through it pretty.
Thank you.
It's 450 pages, so it's fine. So the one thing that I had told Nate was, that struck me, partly because like I'm an ex-sales and marketing guy, and I know a little bit about marketing and branding. And so one of the things that was emphasized in the plan was this idea of the McGlincy Dell Avenue effort to kind of develop that district with a brand. And in the plan, they talked about calling it Silicon Alley, okay, as if it was going to be a big tech area. And I got a real problem. I had a real problem with it because I worked in the Valley. I worked in the Valley for a long, long time. And I worked out of a lot of office parks. Almost every single job I had over 30 years were in office parks. Mostly in Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, Cupertino, okay? So I know what an office park looks like. And we have one part of that looks like office park. What I call South Dell, south of Hacienda. It's clean, it's landscaped, it's got trees. It looks like office parks. It's very nice, as office parks go. But the Dell north of there to the expressway and McGlincy are not nice office parks, in my personal humble opinion, okay? They're made up of, tow yards and auto places and no little or no landscaping and in some cases a really bad road, okay? And so I don't see in total looking at the McGlincy Dell thing as this marketing branding thing, because I think people would kind of look askew at that in the Valley because they really know what it is in real life, okay, because of us being in Silicon Valley. So that's just my opinion about that. And I actually don't understand how it got into the plan that way. But so that's my take on that. But part of that is also with McGlincy being important, and I understand McGlincy is important, and I understand, I've rode through there a few times, and it could use improvement. Mm-hmm. And so, but the city doesn't have capital improvement funds, I don't think, for McGlincy, or they can't improve. What's the private road?
Christchurch.
Okay, it's really bad. Okay, so it's like I don't know if it needs improvement to make things better, but I'm curious as to whether or not the city has ever looked at or considering looking at making capital improvements to that area to make it more, more desirable.
I don't know the history in Campbell, kind of institutionally. In the economic development plan, it does make mention of one idea around business improvement districts, not just for downtown. So we are currently doing a feasibility study on a property-based improvement district in downtown Campbell. But the economic development plan does raise the potential of looking at an improvement district for the industrial areas. That is something that the business owners would have to basically vote on to basically tax themselves to create, to kind of come together and pool resources to make some improvements. I think the other thing is as properties are reinvested in over time, that can also kind of improve the presence kind of in the right of way, which we've seen, right? We've seen as some properties have either redeveloped or come in with significant renovations that has triggered certain right of way improvements. So things like complete sidewalk or landscaping.
There have been some in the past, the Dell Avenue.
The big Dell Avenue.
Yeah, that did have public improvement.
Right. And that was mostly down by the percolation ponds.
Yeah, the whole south.
Right, okay, yeah. And the only other thing I have is just I have a little pet peeve, and I don't know whether or not it's, you know, we've built we have a lot of vacancies and have built a lot of small office buildings that are either stay vacant once they're built or end up having something in there that doesn't really generate any sales tax for us. So there's like there's a couple new ones on Hamilton, and you know, they built some on Winchester, and there's another new one on Winchester, and they're typically 2-story office buildings. And you know, and the ones that are like just south of Campbell Avenue on Winchester, they built these. They're actually mixed use. I believe there's apartments up above, and there's you know what I'm talking about, right?
Are you referring to
Where the pancake house is, all those.
Right, and then Lisa's Tea Treasures.
Yeah,
moved
right,
into
right.
The other
And
small.
so there's a bunch of retail there, and a lot of those stayed empty for a long time after those things were built. And we have other vacancies in the city where there's where there are little storefronts. And what defaults often ends up being is a salon. Okay? And you know, a nail salon, a hair salon, a nail hair salon, you know, and we've got a lot of them, right? And so I'm not against salons, right? But the problem is it's a service. And unless somebody's buying a bottle of shampoo, we only get sales tax from it. Now, some of those people hopefully will go to lunch or dinner after they get their hair done. But we end up defaulting, I believe, an awfully lot to that kind of service. And it doesn't seem to be the optimum thing for economic development.
So I'll jump in a little bit. So one thing, Commissioner Zister, if you remember, the city adopted objective standards, the MFDDS, that acronym. There was a huge discussion on, during general plan, to what extent, as we do residential development, should we have ground floor retail? And a big aha that came out of that was under consultation from a commercial broker that we often use was oftentimes cities require developers to put in these spaces. Residential developers hate it because they're hard to lease and they don't manage. Right. And they're often cheapened out in their small spaces that you can't put much into. And what happens going in there is a T-Mobile or a nail salon. So where we went with objective standards is to reduce the number of areas where you had to have ground floor. But when we required them to make sure the space was big enough, you could actually put in a restaurant or a use fully filled. So that was tactically the approach with objective standards.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. So that change hopefully will make a difference, right?
We hope so.
In theory.
One space, I don't know if you're aware of, but probably are, it's 1300 White Oaks Avenue. This is right where you get off the exit from 17 off ramp.
Right, yes. I'm
It's,
familiar with that.
it's been vacant, you know, I pass by it twice a day when I come to work. That's been is a large 2-story.
Is that the place that we did something for?
You have some
Not
information,
lately.
Danny?
Yeah, so, I mean, in the years past, we've had some proposals for more intensive development to that side or
Yeah.
occupancy of it.
Yeah.
The challenging part is that the southbound, northbound off-ramp from 17 onto White Oaks, that's a serious operational issue from a traffic situation perspective. It actually warrants a whole signalization project. So really, anything a significant degree is gonna have to practically reconstruct that entire area. So, I mean, substantial.
But that's a very large parcel. It may be worth it to signalize that, I mean, I go by it every day and I take a chance, when I,
Commissioner, there are tenants in there, but it's not, it's obviously not its highest and
it's
best.
definitely not fully, I mean, the parking lot is almost always empty, so if there are tenants in there, it's not, that
Yeah.
big of an occupancy. Anyway,
Can I
that's
ask one more question? If you're done?
One more.
Yeah, one more. And you didn't really go over it, but it was in your general information. Super Bowl 2026, what we just had,
So it was 60.
okay? The Super Bowl
Yes.
in January, January or February,
February.
whatever. Okay, so there was a big deal about like us preparing for it, okay? For that matter, other cities in the county too. And I just wondered if in fact we did make some kind of special preparations for the Super Bowl in Campbell, because there was talk of it, and whether or not we saw some benefit
Yeah.
during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I think primarily the way the city engaged, the way our business organizations engaged was to really try to push visitation to our existing venues that have what we call native screens. So our bars and restaurants to try to pack people in and then position Campbell as a place to come and stay and kind of easily hop light rail so you don't have to bother with traffic to get up to Santa Clara. It's actually really convenient. So what we saw was our hotels actually did pretty well. They did better than they were expecting, particularly our more competitive hotels, right? That kind of upper tier. Our restaurants and bars saw kind of mixed reviews, right? Downtown Campbell retailers report actually lower than expected sales for Super Bowl Sunday, whilst our bars and restaurants that had kind of good, have a good draw for those types of sporting viewing events did pretty well.
So we get a second bite at the apple with the World Cup coming.
Right.
Because that same venue is going to host several World Cup games, right? And one advantage that Campbell has is that because it's beginning of the light rail, many people choose to come here to get on the light rail, because by the time it stops at the next few stops, it's full. People can't get on anymore.
Yes, I was seeing stories about that all weekend. Yeah.
Some people.
I mean, the other thing I want to point out is that the leagues and the owners are very restrictive around what cities can do in terms of things like public viewing and their issuance of licenses. FIFA, so Super Bowl is very restrictive, except for official events that they authorize. FIFA has a little more flexibility in terms of what they allow communities to do, particularly for public viewing events that are under 1,000 people. So it's something, we'll be talking with our community stakeholders about, but what we're focused on, like with our downtown association, with our key commercial owners, is around how do we amplify the marketing around kind of native events.
I said one other thing I want to follow up on. So you say that the FAR is too small. Like, what would be the actual FAR that a hotel would need to make it
So
work?
that's a great question, and that's why staff is currently researching kind of what industry standard is right now and what developers would be looking for.
And as I understand it, hotel, like, we're very used to AB 2097, meaning that in the important parts of town, there's no parking requirements, but I think does that not apply to hotels?
That's correct, and that's also been incorporated into density bonus law and SB 79 as well.
Like, the hotels still have to do.
The legislature, just included hotels or kind of special privileges under the law.
So that would be one possible avenue to entice hotels to be here, would be to trade like lower parking requirements for like a shuttle to light rail or something like that.
Yeah, and just to highlight too, that the FAR is baked into the general.
and to its final document.
Oh, that's not
Much-
saying we can change zoning.
More than
laws.
just a code update. It's an update to the general.
So does that mean that would have to wait 20 years or just that would have to go to the city council?
It's a heavier lift.
Once a year, I think you change the general plan, right?
Yeah,
Or
but
twice.
technically 4 times a year,
Four
so
times.
you bundle. That's never
Once
been
a year.
ample. It's just in terms of the scope of the review, it's a bit more than just changing a conditional use to an admin condition.
Okay, you may want to stick around for the next presentation, given that my understanding of like housing by itself is, has been somewhat controversial, but on a broader level, if rents go down, it means people have more money to spend on businesses and it costs less to hire people, and it seems to be better in general for economic development that all the money is not just going to landlords. So hopefully we'll be able to do some of that.
Nice segue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's
thank you
my
again for the
segue.
presentation.
Public comment?
Well, I was gonna say my little piece too. No, it's just saying the recommendations are very supportive of FAR sort of reevaluation. Quick service, full restaurant. I had talked to staff about Any Burger. They opened in a full service spot, used to be a Forthright Oyster Bar. And then they had so much weirdness. I ended up talking to them. They felt like they couldn't put ketchup bottles on the table because they were full service, and that really resonated. It just feels so arbitrary. It feels like something we really should clean up, making it easier for restaurants that just be restaurants. Like, how do we eliminate the friction for them? So that one. I also thought, echoing what Commissioner Bookbinder said, this was helpful to understand our industrial use more maybe than I did, and the importance of it. So I appreciated that. The office thing is interesting because I think mega campuses have been a want of Bay Area tech firms the last 20 years, but I could see that changing in the next 20 with smaller teams that still want to be co-located. I think somewhat this could be a benefit if they were modernized. I think, like you pointed out, some of them are not particularly nice and they would need to be nicer, but I do think the smaller spaces actually might be a benefit. Whereas you have these mega campuses, and if companies aren't hiring 50,000 new people in a year, like that actually could be a benefit for Campbell. The only thing I was going to ask is I don't have the same beef with salons, but
You have nicer hair.
we have a lot of fitness centers.
We do.
Like so many, and I'm just curious, what do cities do if they just realize they're becoming absolutely inundated with uses? Because we could pick on them and say that's not a sales tax thing, but that has been our most common CUP. There's just so many fitness centers in Campbell. So at some point, if we were hey, we want to encourage more uses, we want other stuff, is there any sort of precedent of how a city would approach something like that?
No, I have not seen a city enact a health club kind of moratorium, so to speak, the way we have with smoke shops.
Sure.
I could look into that. I think it's an interesting trend, and it's evolving. You are going to see probably some more. You will also see change over time, right? And we're going to lose one, right? The American Barbell Club is going to go away, right? And so, these things often can have a way of kind of sorting themselves out. I think what's interesting with fitness, because I also wonder just how fit can people get. Yeah. And so, there may at some point also be a market shakeout. The thing I see though is that these players kind of target different demographics, right? And it seems like the addressable market for some of these nichier concepts is greater than one would suspect. But it's certainly an area that we continue to monitor. And I think, Chair, that you'll probably see a couple more, right, as we move forward. In a shopping center that is, and we're kind of talking to one right now, that's looking at a shopping center that has some substantial vacancy in it. In some of these specific cases like that, a true Boston club can really change the game in a positive way for the inline shops. And so from an economic development standpoint, people like me can be like, we can get our goosebumps up around this. But on the other hand, I can also see cases where it can be actually very helpful.
Now to that too, that not an accident. Only 16, 17 years ago, I mean, I did a code update that was largely oriented around parking reform. But as part of that update, we did introduce the new concept of studio uses. And that had the effect of really kind of laying the groundwork for when the market started seeing this new demand, that we had the zoning for it. And the parking standards that allowed it to more easily move into retail sectors that before that would have been very, very different. And so because the zoning was supportive of it, we saw a lot of it. But had those changes not occurred, the zoning would have largely probably blocked many of those types of establishments from opening.
The only other thought I had too, and not that we can ever conjure anything into being, but like, man, it'd be great if that Whole Foods or the Fry site became housing with a Whole Foods or a big box at the bottom of it, because like, I don't know how Campbell will achieve its housing goals and also get a big box retailer if they're not one mega block. And there's starting to be more of those, and I think they're fairly compelling, but there's not many. But like, that's one observation I have is like, I can't imagine us getting a new big box store and hitting our housing goals given how few sites we have. And like, to me, like the only way would be, you know, there's a Target on the bottom and there's 600 homes above it or something, you know, at one of these sites.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good point, and this is really about the trade-offs, right? And they're tough.
Yeah,
they're tough from an economic development standpoint. We have not seen in the core Bay Area yet that retail mixed-use typology, like the famous Southern California Costco.
Sure.
I hope we will get there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's coming soon, but I will always have hope.
Great.
Well, I'd say true urban centers. You go to San Francisco, obviously, there's Whole Foods, Safeways. If you go to the Parises and New Yorks of the world, that's just the standard of development. You have 8 to 10 stories of mixed-use residential, and you have a large, all types of formatted stores on the bottom. You just have a city that's sort of emerging from its suburban roots, and I don't think the market's evolved to a point where so much rate.
I will open it to public comment. Do we have anyone who would like to speak on this topic?
Anyone.
Thanks, everybody. It's fun hearing it all. You guys taking this approach. Did a great job hiring Nathan. I've known him for 2 decades now, maybe. I mean, when he was at the San Jose Mercury News, he'd be like, okay, what development are you guys doing? What's the scoop? And I'd be like, I can't tell you, but like, if you know, don't break the, patient client confidentiality. But so he's built that rapport again with me and Campbell. We've been chasing big sites, $30, $40 million sites in Campbell, and I'm calling him out. I'm asking him questions about it. I'm saying, please don't share the information. I've signed NDAs on these things. I've got some ideas. Some are crazy, some aren't. But, what are your feelings on it? And like he's not just doing that with me. He's doing it with other developers. And it's kind of with someone like him, you can start to really open up the commode and actually start sharing things earlier to try to see if the risks are worth it, because we're all in the business of de-risking and looking at things. And so it's great to have him as a resource. It's like a total reciprocity. He'll tell me a little bit about what's going on. We call it market poop, and I'll tell him a little bit about what's going on. And he's a purveyor of information, and that's the best thing you can ask for an economic development director. Listening to you guys, I got my head was exploding with ideas, so I got to stop and not overload you on stuff, and then definitely ping me. I took a couple tiny notes, if you guys don't mind me sharing. I'd love to. We just recently finished up a Lucid car, basically service center, delivery center, sales center. I own it with my partner, Don. is 50,000 square feet, 250 Stockton Avenue. That was a bit of a lift with the city. It was a bit of a lift with Lucid. We had other groups that were looking at it as well. From Cruise Automotive, that was partners with GM at one point. A few other groups I can't talk to you about, but ultimately Lucid, you can eat off the floor there. It's like this like clean tech thing. And I think where the revenue is going to come in from the city is going to be a combination of, it's a delivery center. So again, they're still figuring out the sales tax. There's a limited number of sales that can happen there, but the service component, if they're selling the parts within that service component, that's a revenue generator for them. And so thinking about cars more on an industrial and service side than an auto mall storeroom would be something to really critically think through and think about sites in that light versus, I don't think we're going to find the traditional auto mall. It's just, I've tried to crack that nut. I've tried to figure it out, all these different angles. Commissioner Kamkar, you mentioned all these different, we know these guys, they pay great rents. I'd love to own sites on Stevens Creek. We don't, but I know many friends that do, but they tend to aggregate in these nodes, and that's where they're at. But that was just a tiny bit on the car thing. I had the industrial, we're not very big industrial players, but I used to be a residential developer. An example would be, there's a lumber yard in Sunnyvale that was in the center of what their ITR zoning was, which was Sunnyvale came up with this kind of in the circa 2010s, which is industrial to residential. This is like a 4th generation lumber yard. And we're building next to him. We're super supportive, great owner, great person, but now he's subject to noise studies. So now he's had a business there forever. Residential is invading the territory. Now all of a sudden he's worried he might not be able to run his 4th generation lumberyard. So when you look at industrial, be very mindful of the proximity that you put with residential, and they don't play well together. And the residential will eventually win and the industrial will lose. So keep that island if you want in that area. It's a great incubator for small space. I think it's a great showing of where the general fund's at. It does, Campbell, like a lot of small cities, has got a structural deficit. It's going to keep running it. So you got to figure out how to grow these small incubator spaces to try to make up that. I think it's like a $4 million deficit Campbell's running every year. So these are the kind of conversations you got to figure out how to protect, grow, and do well with. I had an idea on streamlining, which is something, Commissioner Fields, you're really big on. I've been running this idea by Nathan. He probably doesn't want me to say it out loud, but so if you talk to a bunch of the developers and owners, building department's fantastic. They're responsive. Public Works is great. Fire. I won't say any more, but I've talked to Nathan about City of Morgan Hill actually had the same problem, same complaints. They did something about it. They actually brought in their own fire plant checker, who also moonlights as a building inspector. And then the amount of revenue and fees that they produce from that fire plant checker is more than that covers the salary. It also helps with work overload with the building inspectors. And it's someone that's personal, local to Campbell that works with the building department. Because the building department works really hard to turn around comments to us. And then fire will take 45, 60 days. So why would the building department work super hard to give us comments really fast when they know fire is just going to be 45, 60 days? And so you guys have a contract that goes out till 2028, but you can look at that contract. I think you can put them under performance notice. That is the biggest thing. If you ask any owner, developer, anybody in this entire city, they'll say fire without wasting 1 second of your time. So and developers know that. We all know that. We're going, oh shoot, that's going to require a bunch of fire. I don't want to deal with it. County fire, it's not worth it. We'll pass on the deal. That's what that will do in terms of that. I think there was some bigger box deals I was looking at for a moment, like $250 million a year big box deals I was looking at for Campbell for a moment on a couple sites that didn't quite materialize, but that Hamilton corridor towards in 17, that's like gold. You're hitting the nail on the head with it has to be a housing element. Those sites are there, but you can't recreate those. Retail is super finicky. If it's not right off the freeway, if it's not Surface Park, they'll pass. They don't have to go anywhere. And we are retail developers. We try to understand their analytics, try to understand their approaches, left in, left out, ingress, egress. There's a million things they look into. And if Hamilton in 17, you can pull amazing retailers. You go half mile in either direction, not interested. So it's like that, so, and again, that Bed Bath and Beyond turning into a health service company, that's going to be there forever. Right. And so it's just, it is what it is, but it's like, there could have been how long is Kohl's going to last? That was a prime 9 acres, and so it's just that there, and that's where economic development, I think, has to look at that long range, get in some guys' ears, try to avoid the piecemealing that sometimes can happen that then causes long-term perpetual problems. But I think I'll just give like one last idea and I'll stop yammering. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think you'll look at a lot of this stuff and go, man, what can I control? What can I do? What can I make happen? What are the market forces? What's going on? I think it's almost like look at what the best things you have going for you and like double down. And like downtown, in my opinion, is the hardcore identity. It's a reason why people move here. It's a reason why I get office tenants. It's Campbell at its very core. And I think sometimes when something's going well, we don't focus on it and we forget about it. And we just assume it's on cruise control. And downtown, it needs love. I would say if you double down there, you won't see the direct dollars out necessarily right away, but it'll pay dividends over time. It's like this kind of sneaky investment that will pay back more and more over time. And so what does that look like? And that, one, it's time, money, effort, energy, right? And focus. It's everything from Nathan creating the PBID. It's everything from, is there some kind of entertainment draw? Like we were looking at it, trying to bring a rock climbing gym into downtown. I mean, that would have been super cool. I mean, we're just trying to movie theaters are, we think Premier Simmons is going to say that's great, but it's just some kind of entertainment draw. Back in the day, there used to be a theater there that's now an arcade down below, but they used to have live music there. It's just like, what's the entertainment true venue that's coming into downtown? What are more programs to do with families and centric things like, more things like Oktoberfest? What are things that, overall just kind of program clean up? Is there an investment that can go into a new park in downtown, creating a new central park, a new space where families and everyone aggregate right in the heart of downtown, where it involves losing some city surface parking lots, but you create a true sense of identity where you've got dogs running around, you got kids, you got people playing chess, you got the whole demographic is there, and it's all centralized in downtown, and then they patronize the businesses. It's all, people want to live there, housing values go up, it's just like this cascade effect that can happen. And so I would say you can get lost in all the things in the presentation, the data, but it's that I would look at those as these kind of interesting drivers behind it.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know. So I went way over it.
A wealth of ideas.
I'll stop. Yeah, but I
appreciate
you guys are on. You guys are on to great stuff. I think it's a great thing to be focused on. Appreciate that.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah.
I would plus on the information sharing, and if you haven't signed up for his newsletter, it's a good monthly newsletter. Oh, it's nice. Yeah, I'd tell you to sign up. So with that, I'm planning on closing the study session on this item. Thank you, Nathan, again for the presentation. That was very illuminating. And I am going to move us to our next agenda item.
Take a 2-minute break?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, and we'll do a 2-minute break.
it's just an overview outline of what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Get that out of there.
It's you and Gary?
It's me and Gary.
Okay.
All right.
All right. This is a long title. Subcommittee on Permitting Process for Streamlining to Benefit Economic Development. And Gary and I just put our heads together to come up with a kind of a five-step plan of what we're gonna do. Conditional use and new ordinance review. So we're gonna this was after having asked Davis to give us some additional input based on his thoughts, what he had in mind. So we're gonna the last 2.5 or so years since the last committee did theirs. We're also gonna look a bit at the permit history, just for our own, partly for our own edification to understand how we don't see administrative cups. So we want to take a look and see how often, how common they are, what they consist of. We'll take a look at that. We're going to review the ordinance that was adopted as a result of the last effort and look at items that were considered but not included. Understand the process of an administrative cup versus a standard cup. We want to understand this better in terms of what it takes to process both these permits and what the difference in, we'd like to meet with staff to discuss it and understand better how much more simpler administrative is than a full CUP and where it goes differently in that respect. And are there ways to further streamline and shorten the process? Can you go to the second one? We're going to meet with certain stakeholders. We're going to meet with Nate, hopefully with some brokers and some of them, maybe some of Campbell business owners, possibly some of the newer ones that have come in to see what issues they had, and whether or not the process has what's in all the changes that we did, whether or not this helped help the process, and whether or not there's a perception, say from brokers, that there's a better process in Campbell. Compare further with other local jurisdictions on permitting. We're gonna try and talk to three or four jurisdictions again, maybe some of the same, maybe some different. We haven't really determined who they are. Compare them in terms of type of permits by business, process and time frame pending permits. So we're gonna look at some of the other jurisdictions and see how we compare to them. And most likely we'll be talking to Rob a bit about that. Process, so we'll put all that data together, we'll process it and put it down, analyze it, and then we'll put out a report. And we're estimating a 3 to 4 month period. And that's where we stand on it. You got any suggestions? Anything else we should take a look at? We'd be happy to do that.
So in the realm of more radical suggestions, the idea that we were just talking about changing from everything is CUP and some things are admin CUP, switching that.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
We'll include that in our consideration.
What that would take, presumably that would take a bunch of discussion and
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, whether
It has been
that's a
suggested.
radical, I mean, my first question is that something that has been done, and how radical that is, what the implications of that with the staff and the city doing that? That would certainly be a number of questions I would personally have about considering that as a possibility. But since Nate has put it on his list of ideas, it should be added to our consideration, I think.
Yeah, I think especially, yeah, basically what he said.
Okay, all right. That's all we got.
No, I dig it just for the jurisdictions. Last time I looked at Cupertino, Saratoga, and Los Gatos, they seem like are comparables. So just telling you that for reference. And just like broadly, like my perspective on this is the more we can do to streamline these little small ones that we've seen less of, but still, today with Salt, it's like, let's not make them. Let's not make future Sultans come in here for like the small stuff. But I am interested in some, like something Nathan just said, or I'm sorry, the gentleman said that was interesting is sort of like, the large gym, a piecemeal property, like what are the places that we as a body are trying to reserve some amount of jurisdiction and places that we're weighing in, and like what's that line? Like I'm probably interested on those two extremes of like making it much easier for the small benign stuff, but like for the big weighty properties, like do we still have the ability to like understand these, discuss these, really think about where the city's going? I think like those are the two poles that are probably interesting in this process. But a thorough plan, exciting.
Okay.
Timeline seems good.
All right. All right.
Yeah. Mr. Campbell?
Actually, Commissioner Bookbinder is gonna present, and I can, from time to time.
Thank you.
Go with the slides?
Yeah.
We're good.
I recognize that I probably should have made this into a PowerPoint, but I wrote it as a Google Doc, so we're all gonna get through this.
Could I actually ask one question? But like staff on that subcommittee, does that seem reasonable? There's some staff time to help consult if they have questions as they go, kind of like we did a couple years ago. Does that seem?
Yeah, it's rare for planning commissions to do this level of work, so it's remarkable. I am down staff 40%. So
We won't ask you for much.
taking good research done by the commission is absolutely, take anything we get. Obviously melding that into, proposed ordinances and getting staff feedback is important on, how it integrates with code. So I didn't have any objections to the work plan. Let's say it.
Great. Great. Thank you.
All right. So, thank you, everyone. I know we'll have to take the goal here is to get feedback from the commissioners. We'll hopefully send in policy package to send council. The goal here is how to clean Campbell. We have policies, use our zoning percentages for impact fees and stuff past all of these things have been really difficult. We explicitly not try to propose things that think easy to pass or really palatable, but what would actually solve it. So first, on inclusionary zone percentages, there are a couple of interesting work examples. I actually read a lot about what San Jose have done. I know. Scroll down a bit. The two work examples I looked at were two jurisdictions which had increased their inclusionary zone percentage, found that it produced fewer subsidized housing units on net and rolled these back versus how San Francisco with population C and half Portland. Portland saw everybody seems to try to work around the requirements. They keep it at 20 units, or they built 19 projects, or built just outside city limits. Oregon has pulled the process of outlawing unfunded engineering mandates. The problem is when they're funded, it's development. So, note you're also saying, pointing out that we are constrained that are generally short on revenue, not raised organized revenue to just subsidize private development. It's a tough situation. There's a lot more
Francisco, this is the effect of what happened in San Francisco. Four propositions C on the left, after proposition C on the right. The middle being what proposition C is sold as point two, just take more of used units, make them subsidized. That would happen is get fewer used units and fewer subsidized. Disastrous. Also, this is in general here. This is a very helpful graph of rents versus permits across metro areas. We are not explicitly written there, but we're supposed to way on the bottom right there. The upshot is that there's no place that builds a lot of housing has expensive rents. Therefore, the very straightforward thing to do if we want to be more affordable is we put ourselves in that upper left quadrant with quality Boston as opposed to in the lower right with San Francisco.
So if I can interject, so in other words, the more housing you build, the better you solve the situation. Because it's hard to make developers make affordable housing, but if we don't make them make affordable housing, just make it much more housing, and affordability comes.
Yeah, and additionally, if the market rate is lower, we are in sort of a vicious cycle where the rent is really high. So more people need subsidized housing. We try and crank up the portion of subsidized housing that developers want to do, which means you get less development, which means you get higher rents.
And a vicious circle.
I'm not really clear on this graph.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Should I start from the beginning? Okay.
No, you have to start from.
I can do that.
If you could just explain the graph a little bit more.
Sure. The left axis is how many like the rate of new housing production, how many permits per 1,000 residents. So how many houses per person are they building?
So it's actually on a unit basis.
Units per resident.
1,000 people. It's not permits.
Yeah.
It's building permits. Like permitted units.
Okay.
Yeah. Go on. Me describing the vicious cycle. There's a bit more here about the effect of market rate housing on housing affordability, which is empirically, it's been well studied. There's an anecdote there about how filtering works. If you've ever seen how hermit crabs work, houses work like that. Generally, when there's low vacancy, if you make a new high-end unit, somebody moves into that. From a medium unit, somebody moves up into that, and so on. Empirically, there's a number of studies in the footnotes, one specifically in New York City, one in San Francisco, one in a variety of different places. I think there was one in Finland that I could not get the link to. That is from a paper by Evan Mass, that if you produce 100 new market rate units, you will free up within 5 years between 17 and 39 bottom quintile units.
So if I can interject, so the
Sure.
same thing happens in employment, right? When Rob, the economic development director, becomes let's say one of the council members or whatever, that job opens up, the staff will start moving up, and so by one movement, several other categories will improve. Same thing with housing. When one person leaves their house, other come in to buy that, and this economic activity.
Question.
Yeah, please.
Aren't the inclusionary housing like targets that we're trying to meet state set?
So
I'm just like, what exactly are you advocating for the city of Campbell to do?
So we have targets that are above and beyond what the state does. The state, I believe, does not require anything. The state provides incentives under the state density bonus law. Now, these incentives are so nice that pretty much everybody uses them.
Okay.
But we require things above and beyond what you have to do to get the state density bonus. Let me know if I'm off here.
In our arena,
Yeah.
we obviously have above market rate, below market rate.
Right.
And Commissioner Bucklider is correct. There's different tools to do that. If the city did nothing, there's a tool that's out there, which is density bonus. And many developers have to provide an affordable unit, which is below market rate. Again, the city has gone beyond, as many cities have done, for about 5% beyond that. You have to provide 10% of your units to get a density bonus. The city has a 15%.
Right. I got it.
So we're half again as much as you have to do by the state to get, and density bonus, the state density bonus law is so attractive in part because it gives you those waivers, which means that you can essentially bypass any specific city development standards, as we've seen recently. With fees, impact fees discourage housing production. The only reason we put fees on new units is basically because it's politically palatable, which is not nothing. Like, I'm not elected, I don't have to worry about that, but the people who make these rules do. But it does reduce housing production. Every so often we talk about maybe we should do this, and then the state gets around to it. I will point out that this year the state legislature is looking at fee reform. I do recognize that other cities in the region do it worse, but other cities in the region also have terrible housing crises. If we want to produce more housing, the fees are not necessary. It is not necessary to do it this way. We can do this other ways. We should not be doing this. And lastly, generally speaking, I don't have a more specific recommendation for this. This is an interesting illustration of how Los Angeles' zone capacity used to be much larger than their built capacity. And over a period of about 20 years, they shrunk their zone capacity. There's two sort of ways you can provide capacity. One, you can try and predict what's going to get developed and you upzone there specifically, or you can make it just generally possible to build in your city so that your city could, in theory, if everybody wanted to develop it, suddenly become 5 times as large. It doesn't actually work like that. But one of the downsides to doing the sort of shrink-wrapped style that is what everybody does is that if there's, for example, a very popular pickleball court on one of your key sites, you're really in hot water. This is kind of where we've gotten. Now, again, the state kind of has done an end run around this because we've seen, I think I was going to bring this up at the end, there's like 2 SB 1123 projects that are going on in San Tomas right now, which is not something we ever got around to doing under SB 10 or whatever, but that's like, it is now possible to, like, the zoned capacity of the city, the city has de facto gone up. Generally an approach that we should take more of if we want to produce more. I think that's about the end of it. There's a pile of footnotes there. Yeah, so many footnotes. Matt and I are happy to take questions. I recognize that I am pointing sort of to the bleachers here, but given what I've been able to look up, if we want to really do better instead of doing incrementally better, this is what it would take. I do want to also mention what San Jose has done. San Jose, given that they pretty much, I think they had 0 multifamily construction in 2024, they made a number of really impressive concessions that they waived a bunch of development fees. They significantly cut their inclusionary requirements for the first, I think, 1,800 projects that were permitted by a particular endpoint. And they got a ton of development then because it was a tremendous incentive to get it done by that point. So we can, I think our current set of incentives was designed for when there was a lot of money flowing around, 0 interest rates, and everybody wanted to develop here, and we could sort of pick and choose and take a lot of benefits off the top. Given that that is absolutely not the regime we're under anymore, it's probably possible to make a system that will be responsive to economic situations so that we make it easier for people to develop in a counter-cyclical fashion. But I don't see the problem with just making it easier for people to build in general. We've spent 30 years digging our way into a housing crisis. We could, instead of incrementally trying to make our way out, we could just get our way out now. That's the recommendation. I am happy to take questions.
Do you want to go first?
Well, so you're talking about can we go back to the three things that you had?
Sure, yes.
That was at the top of
The top of it.
those are the three recommendations.
I was gonna put them in red, but I figured that seemed too doomy.
Reduce inclusionary zoning percentage. So you're talking about reducing the number of
It's the 15%.
the affordable housing, be a below market rate.
Yes,
To snap to the state minimum.
yeah. People are going to use the state numbers anyway, generally. If you remove it or reduce it to the state number, it would probably have roughly the same effect, I think.
And you think that will make a significant difference?
Yes, yes, given that instead of having people essentially give away, we would,
I understand they're subsidizing 5% more than. but
yeah, it would.
The 5% would make a big difference.
Yeah, it would reduce the cost of the subsidies by about a third. I also am not sure if we have the details of our BMR requirements. They may be at a deeper affordability level, but yes, it would cut those by a third.
All right, so impact fees, do we have more than, are the impact fees that we ask for, is it more than the park fees? Is there other impact fees?
That directed me.
Yes.
The city has two notable impact fees. One is Quimby fees, which are park fees. I do have on the work plan and advise the subcommittee before it makes any recommendations to have public works staff come and advise the commission on what those fees are and how they're used. So before you make some recommendations on them, you get a full understanding of how the city relies on that. The other is a new fee. It's a commercial impact fee that actually came through you 2 years ago, and that's for housing. And has a lot of exceptions for small commercial development. But at a certain size of a large new commercial development, you would pay a commercial linkage fee, which is a housing fee.
But that's not a tax on housing, that's a tax on commercial development, right?
That's strictly on commercial.
What traffic impact? Do we have traffic?
There's some nominal road maintenance fees. They're very small. We actually just got some inquiries about them.
So we're talking about the park fee here, because that park fee is that fee.
Yeah, it's
you know,
something like
whatever it is,
$20,000 per unit.
20,000, or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
A unit, right. And we haven't modified that at all.
And take my answer with a huge grain of salt. My understanding it was updated in the last 7 years. It's been a while. Usually you have to do a new nexus on what the amount of parkway needed, the cost for that parkway, and recalculate the fee. That has not been done, in my understanding, at least the last 5 to 7 years.
But there hasn't, the council looked at that fairly recently, right, about reducing the park fees to help with the housing issue. And they rejected it, right?
So last year, the commission will remember, staff initiated a series of recommendations to support housing production and affordable housing. One was for affordable housing. Today, 100% affordable housing project gets a 50% reduction in their park fees. We had recommended a full waiving of park fees just for affordable housing production. 100% affordable housing projects.
Okay, so when there's 20.
Let me finish. Yeah, the council was not favorable to that.
All right. So they were looking at possibly, if you got, you got 100 units and there's 15 below market rate, reducing the park fees by half on those 15?
Oh, no, it's only for 100% affordable developments.
Or only on 100% affordable development?
That would have been a second option. If you had a 100-unit project that was market rate, you produce 15 affordable units, but the city take out the park fees for the affordable units. That wasn't explicitly the Commissioner Buckbinder. It was only for the 100% affordable projects.
And what was their rationale?
I think they were sensitive. Number one, it's explicit that the city's not in great fiscal health at this point. Measure K is still tied up in a lawsuit. The whole reason for Measure K was to fill budget holes. Without that budget hole filled, the city is facing fiscal issues. And two, park fees for capital improvements. The city relies a lot on those park fees to build things or maintain parks. One thing on the spectrum is rebuilding the pool that's aging. Sure. And there's lots of infrastructure agents. I think they're very sensitive to reducing that income stream.
That's the kind of thing I would want to know. It's like, what happens if our fees go away? What do we lose? What's the downside?
Sounds like that's in the presentation.
That's the intent on bringing public works staff.
And we could probably, what, do you know about when?
I was thinking April timeframe.
Sounds fine.
Yeah, about two meetings ahead.
I mean, I ideally, like, I want to emphasize, like, my goal here is not, we should not have parks. We should not fund the parks. It's that we should not fund the parks by hampering the production of new housing, which I will add, if we produce it, it produces revenue for the city, which could go towards parks. Like that is an actual revenue stream. I think we've backed ourselves into a corner, and the city council is understandably a little wary of taking away a very certain, we will get X amount of dollars per unit for, well, maybe we'll produce more and we'll get something to the general fund at some point in the future. But at the same time, I think it's a very iffy nexus, especially since we're not building new parks, to say new people will need to contribute this much to. I understand why the city is doing it. I think it is short-sighted, and I realize it's a big lift, but fixing the problem is a big lift. So I would like to have parks here, and I'm happy to brainstorm ideas or say we should do this in a different way. Again, I don't have something against parks. I have something against harming our housing production, which is what this is about.
Well, my problem is I don't understand, how much the park fees bring into the city, what they're used for every year. If it's about fixing a pool or putting in a new playground, I know we don't have any more new parks, okay? That's like a long shot, right? So the question is, what are we using them for now? And is the number the right number to do what we're doing now, or can we do with less, right? So I like to understand the implications of pulling something out of the budget.
Yeah.
And then if it's pulled out of budget, where do we get it from otherwise?
I understand that it's a lot easier to add fees to housing than it is to pass a parcel tax, which is how you get everybody to pay for something around, which is a structural problem, which is one of the things that has led us here.
So the other thing, the increased zone capacity. So you don't think that based on what we've gone through here with the new housing element and all the density work that we did on zoning, that's still not enough?
I think it's much better. I think it's much better than it was, but I think given how vulnerable we are to one big site doesn't work out, I think that underscores how much you do need to over provision if you're actually going to hit your targets. Like, I realize we've done more than we've ever done before, and I'm saying it's insufficient. The problem's big.
Yeah. Well, we put in a huge buffer, and the problem has been that the developers haven't been rushing to Campbell to build. I don't really fully understand. One of the things that struck me was, and I know we didn't have a builder's remedy issue because we got it mostly in time. But what struck me is that builders rushed to Los Gatos in Saratoga. And between the two of them, there were 38 builder's remedies projects put in, okay? And it's like, why can't some of those developers be coming to Campbell, which is right next door? And so it's like, well, I understand a little bit because those places, they can put up, more expensive townhomes and get more money for them. But it seems so out of like.
I think the problem is, I think what we heard was certainty. If you have, there's a really great tool that the Turner Center put out to describe just how much any amount of uncertainty just absolutely destroys your rate of return on a project, like sends your risk sky high, and it just makes something not worth it. I can't speak to why particular developers work there and not here, but if there's reasons why something used to be barely plausible and now it's not at all plausible, moving the needle back in the direction of being plausible, that's how we get there. I did not have time to do a write-up of what exactly San Jose has done, but that is pretty much what they did. They reduced the preliminary percentages. They actually also upped this was in specifically areas that they wanted to develop. Like the projects had to be at least 50 units an acre. They had to have But the below market rate, sorry, the subsidized rate had to be affordable to 110% of AMI, which is like pretty close to market rate. And I think they waived some large number of millions of dollars in impact fees. And these are ones that went to like traffic safety programs. And like that's how seriously they took that. So like I love our parks. I take my kid to the park like several times a week. But like this is how we have to solve this. Yeah. Like this is what's getting in our way. I'm more than happy to adjust this, add details, but this is the framework that I would like to put together into a policy package to send to City Council.
Just since I wanted to keep today kind of charter level, I guess two things. One of your citations mentions sort of permitting being a hidden cost to this, and I think I was hoping one of the areas that you would look at is like, is there anything we could be doing on the permitting process itself outside of policy changes? And I don't know specifically what I mean. I think somebody mentioned the other time about like San Jose had set up like permitting office hours or pop-up sites or something.
That is a really good, like they had ADU Tuesdays that went from like 30 days to like a day to permit your stuff.
Just like, that's one I would love to see like explored.
Okay.
In addition to these. And then I think, I think my other feedback on like approach is some of these clearly are going to run into stuff that council has discussed at some point. So just from like a, mechanism, what I would suggest is like make the initial proposal and then pick one council member to go meet with and socialize the proposal with. Because I think what we don't want to do is just sort of
throw
something over the wall.
Yeah.
To all five of them. So I think from like an order of operations perspective, I'd say, come into this forum, discuss what you're thinking, but then I would probably, and you can maybe help guide us, Rob, of like, who should we go talk to who might have had opinions on this the last time?
I mean, I can talk to the member who represents me.
Right. Because at the end of the day, we're an advisory body, and I think like we want to like sort of stay aligned with council. So I'm like, I would love to do that as an interim step prior to just, sending the recommendation.
Absolutely.
So that's
like they are under pressures that we are not. Like I can put forward economically ideal policies, but again, I don't have to stand for election.
Sure.
So yeah, okay. So I should look at permitting reform, maybe like a shot clock kind of thing. Like I think Los Angeles did that and had like tremendous success with ED1.
Yeah.
They then were surprised at the success and were tried to roll it back as fast as they could.
Yeah.
Which is really telling, I think. But given that, like, we have had a jurisdiction that did solve problems in a very serious way. So, okay, permitting reform and go talk to a council member first.
Some of the council members have come up through planning commission, so they are pretty versed in housing issues and affordable housing and challenges, so they may be a little bit better.
Well, they had to do the general plan and the housing element just like we did. So, I mean, not all the people that are in the council now, but some, the other thing is like, when I look at that graph, and I see Raleigh at the top and, Austin and all that, it's like, we're a different world here. I'm not convinced that chart tells a full story. The problem we have inherently here is we have the most expensive housing in the country.
Right.
It's much easier to build in Raleigh, North Carolina, I'm guessing, okay?
Yes, we could make it much easier to build here.
Yeah. Well, but we have a cost associated with what costs to build here that's not in Raleigh, North Carolina, or
Right.
even in Modesto.
Much of those costs are self-inflicted is the
if you look
idea.
on Zillow in Modesto, Merced, you find housing developments. And I'm not talking about the townhouses, that we build here. I'm talking about houses with yards in the front and the back in a new development. that are $400,000 to $500,000.
Well, I think
That, that are here would be
Yeah.
5 times that much.
Right, because the land here is more expensive, and that does provide, it does produce, like, it does cause certain troubles that you can't just, build out into the wilderness like they can there. I think that the point there, I recognize that we're different, that we have different challenges than Raleigh. I am saying that no matter where you are, like Austin is a downtown. It is, people say Austin is built out. They are not, sprawling like Houston is. And they did have a huge influx of people move in. They just built. And I guess the thing that I'm empirically saying is there is no place, no matter where they are, that has built like Austin and Raleigh that is expensive like we are. It would be a world first, breaking everybody's economic model if we built a lot and remained expensive. That's what I'm trying to put forth.
So I think we can debate more when you're coming back with specific, proposals too.
Yeah.
And,
I'm trying to bring as much.
What my thoughts on.
no, you,
Yeah.
yeah.
If there are empirical questions, I absolutely can go digging and see what I can find about these things.
Can I get a copy of that? Because you got a lot of links and stuff on it.
Yeah, I was hoping that would get sent to everybody. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's
I
a
can
bunch of
look at
footnotes.
it.
Yeah, I'll make sure we share it. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I may replace increased zone capacity with streamlined permitting, just because that's sort of a broad question I don't really have a specific policy for.
Cool.
But definitely reduce inclusionary zoning, remove impact fees, streamline permitting.
Yep. Same question to Rob, staff support. Any feedback?
Yes, feedback, please.
My professional opinion, this will be a tougher road to travel.
Sure.
I didn't do this because I thought it would be easy.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things. Again, don't have a robust staff to support it. Broadly speaking, went down this road last year. So we're going down much the same road as last year, which from the council's perspective and staff perspective, the question might be why, what's changed last year versus this year. And believe me, I know the intent on increasing our housing production, so yes. I would say after observing Commissioner Buckbiner's presentation, there's a lot more facts that I think we need to dig into.
Absolutely. What would you like to know about?
So for one reason, and we don't have to cloud this, one reason San Jose is able to reduce its standards, it has a transfer tax. In San Jose, if you sell your property, I believe over $1 million, you pay an extra tax that goes 100% into their housing fund. Because that fund is so big, they're using that to produce affordable housing, and they've reduced their inclusionary housing requirements. Unfortunately, Campbell doesn't have that. So a lot of times, if you reduce something, there's no free lunch. San Jose was in a situation where it had a funding source that could subsidize reducing inclusionary requirements. So I just advise to look at all the facts.
Similarly, it's a lot easier to raise funds in Oregon, which is why Portland was able to fund their inclusionary zoning. We absolutely do not have a funding source to do that.
And I guess I'll say one last thing. So this was on my, keep it short, but I'll cut to it. So on the next council meeting, we do have a report on SB 79.
Yep.
There are two things with that. One is recommending the city adopt an initial implementing ordinance that defines the geographic areas of SB 79, which excludes the historic properties. And the second is a discussion on should the city pursue an alternative plan, which you can redirect densities. To Commissioner Buckbiner's third point, something to think about. The initial calculations for SB 79 is our residential capacity will increase by 40,000 units.
Right.
Under SB.
Oh, cool. The state did it for us.
So not sure if there's not much zone capacity beyond that. That's a tenfold increase beyond.
Yeah, okay, the state has handled that for us.
Of course, yeah, it'd have to develop.
So,
consolidate
and
develop.
like we talked about, like making an Eck House plan or an alternative plan would be something, some 6-digit amount of money, right?
Yeah, it won't be free.
I'll be interested to hear about that because I did a little research on B79 and I don't get it. So I'll be interested to hear your explanation on that because we don't even have a requirement by degree to do anything for SB 79. We don't have to submit anything to the state. We're not required to do any rezoning. So I want to hear how we get this 40,000 number and what the implications are in real. So I can hardly wait.
The developers being close to transit station.
But we've already done that.
Well,
We've already done the redensifying.
It's, the
by
79
traffic.
makes it bigger. It's like on steroids.
I understand, but when you look at
Right.
what 79 says, it's not a whole lot different than what they can do now.
So I'd advise council members, maybe a report should be out next week.
There we go.
Read the report.
I look
Hopefully
forward
it
to
answers
reading
all
that.
the questions, burning
And
questions.
are we canceling the meeting on the 31st? I see.
We do not have items.
Okay. And just to be clear,
Did we segue, just, are we closing subcommittee reports and segueing to the economic development?
or you mean the miscellaneous community
Yeah.
director report?
Well, it's a report. I don't want to say it's just miscellaneous.
So I write it as miscellaneous.
It's-
Sorry.
Okay, so
Sorry.
yes, thank you for the subcommittee reports.
Right, is there any, just real quick, is there anything else you think I should follow up on? So be clear that San Jose is replacing the income with the transfer tax. Like, how are they producing their subsidized housing? Do we have a plan for doing
I
that?
would take some of this off. The last thing I'd say is I talked to at least 1 or 2 market rate developers and 1 or 2 affordable housing.
Yeah.
You want to truly know what drives the market.
Okay, would you be so kind as to direct me to some developers who generally do a lot of work in Campbell? That would be helpful.
I have 2 questions. One is, what's happening to our vacancy and the commission? And then also, there's a planning commission training tomorrow, right? Like in South, like in Long Beach or something, starting tomorrow.
So I'm going to defer my director's report to Commissioner Camcar. You guys have a good night.
I thought we were gonna adjourn.
Okay. No, now we're doing the community development director. Why don't, when he does his report, then we'll ask him questions, then we'll all go home. Okay. Director Eastwood, we would love to hear your.
It's late night. I'll keep it short. I'll hit to the points already prompted by Commissioner Camcar. Tomorrow morning, I'll be traveling to League of California Cities Planning Commissioners Academy, which I think most of you have attended 1 or 2.
We have been,
There's a pass hopefully for Vice Chair Aquilino. He's already down there. I have a big speech tomorrow. Wish me luck. And I'm introducing Bill Fulton as the keynote speaker. So if you don't know him, he's like a huge name in California planning. If you ever want to know, there's a book called Guide to California Planning by Bill Fulton. Wow. Been around for 30 years. It's sort of like, the layman's guide to California. Hopefully it's a good Planning Commissioners Academy conference. Second point, seat is open. If you go to the city website, boards and commissions, it has a link where you can apply. Open until, I believe it's April 8th. If you know folks who are interested, please push it out. Heard they've gotten 1 or 2 applications, but more is always good. Third point, noted on SB 79, I'll give you a copy of that report. That's going on council at the next meeting. Did want to let you know, we did publish, it's called the West Valley Homeless Services Feasibility Study. It's not something that would normally come to you, but the city put up $100,000 to study new services that could be deployed between the 5 West Valley cities, Campbell, Los Gatos, Montessorino, Saratoga, and Cupertino collectively to address the unhoused population. It's a bunch of small cities as their economies of scale and doing services. So that study is out. It will come to the Campbell City Council for review at their next meeting. And last but not least, I did forward to the council your referral from last year on public outreach in a staff memo. I apologize, I neglected to give you a copy. I'll give you a copy tomorrow. They did discuss that a bit during their priority setting, but I just wanted to make sure you just got a copy of that. And that's all I have.
So the SB 79 going to council, when's that going to council?
It's going to council on the 24th.
When the meeting.
Right, their meeting is on the 24th.
Oh, right.
All right, well, I would like to adjourn this meeting.
Sorry. 30
Sean.
seconds. I
All right.
promise. I mentioned this earlier. I just if anybody has not been getting the weekly development emails, we have two SB 1123 projects, and the Campbell Baskin project is back, and like it's a fun watch. We're actually doing like a lot better than I thought we were doing. So very exciting.
Well, I guess one small, sorry.
That's all right.
Get in the way between you and your gavel. But there was a press item, last Friday, there was a press event for, they claim was the first 1123 project in the state here in Campbell.
Wait, really?
Yes, it was a 7-unit townhome project. Reading, thank you. I think it was on ABC News, was on KQED. Had a nice write-up. Had the senator who authored the bill there, and also some assembly members. Not Senator.
Caballero? It was Caballero.
So it was a nice press event, and it was, if not one of the first 1123 project in the state.
That's so cool.
It's approved, and they got their grading permit. They're working on their building permits.
Man, I'm gonna try and find that.
All good.
That's so cool.
All right, well, with that in mind, I'd love to adjourn this meeting of the Campbell Planning Commission to our next meeting on April 14th, 2026.
Thank you very much.